The Hobbit was undeniably written as a children's book, but its significance in modern literature and fantasy in particular cannot be overstated. It has been 80 years since J.R.R. Tolkien published the book. We take a look at how it earned its position as one of the most imaginative novels of all time.
Far to the east, over ranges and rivers, lies a single solitary peak. The dwarves are determined to reclaim their homeland.
I like visitors as much as the next Hobbit. But I do like to know them before they come visiting.
Mr. Baggins? At your service.
We have come to reclaim our homeland.
I offer you my help.
How do we know he won't betray us?
We don't.
So this is your purpose, to enter the mountain?
What of it?
There are some who would not deem it wise.
A dark path has found a way back into the world.
Why don't we have a game of riddles?
And if it loses, what then? If it loses, precious, then we eat it. If Baggins loses, we eat it whole.
Fair enough.
Home is now behind you. The world is ahead.
Joining me now to further discuss this is TRT World's producer, Arabella Munro. Thank you so much for coming on. The novel didn't have one female character in it. There was a lot of poetry. The language was something that people were not really used to back then. Why was it so special?
I think the things that you've sort of listed there as problems, certainly the language is one of the things that actually does make it really special. Tolkien didn't read modern books. He was totally steeped in the medieval world. And he was a professor of Old English, which I think most people think is Chaucer and like the Arthurian tales, but actually it's this Germanic language with runes, and it is completely unlike what most people think of as English. It's very, very foreign. And so he was really, you know, his imagination was created by very different forces than perhaps most people. And people used to tease him about this book that he was writing. His colleagues at Oxford would say sort of, how's your little Hobbit? But actually, I think that the way it was so other and it was so kind of poetic, and that really appealed to a certain sort of person. And the Hobbit was popular, but it wasn't quite the you know, big name that it is now. For quite a long time, it wasn't really until in the 60s and 70s that Tolkien
made a big hit.
Yeah, and then, you know, it's actually got more and more popular over time.
Well, it was initially written for children, but then the elder generations, it got so much attention from them. Is this a part of its being able to continue its legacy? Yeah, certainly. I think one of the things that does appeal to adults, perhaps compared to other children's books, is that the main character is not a child. He's 50. But he's a little person. He's about 3'6". And so he's this sort of relatable to both. And it's a coming-of-age story for someone who's already a grown-up. And I think that's definitely something a lot of us can relate to. But also, The Hobbit was written for children, but Lord of the Rings wasn't. And so, although in its own right, I think it does still appeal to adults, it's kind of also come off the back of the much bigger success of its sequel. Well, speaking about the Lord of the Rings, it obviously is all originating from a specific genre that I feel like Tolkien has created himself. Do you think that all of those books like Narnia and whatnot was inspired by Tolkien?
Well, Narnia actually, he felt was a pale imitation of his own fantasy world and fell out with his very great friend C.S. Lewis over it. He was very cross, which it was published, you know, I think 20 years after, something like that. I don't think you can really understate how big an impact Tolkien's had on fantasy as a genre. He completely changed the way it was perceived. And if you look at, we wouldn't have Game of Thrones now. We wouldn't, it wasn't, now it's a big market thing. And if you want to write a bestseller, young adult fantasy is a good way to go about it. And that wasn't the case. But Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, all these books, even Sarah J. Maas's books, they all, you know, owe a lot to Tolkien and his extraordinary world building.
Okay, so the movie had came out. I personally didn't read the book, and I watched the movie, which was amazing. Do you think that the movie owes a lot to its success?
I think that you're not alone in having just seen the movies. And of course, a film about a book is always the interpretation of its director and the team. And you can go and see a film about a book and you've read that book a few times and you watch the film. Like the first time I saw Harry Potter, I was devastated. But I think when the Hobbit films came out, they were actually a bit of a mess. Changed director last minute, didn't have proper, Peter Jackson said they were playing catch up all the time. It didn't go very well, and they weren't that well received in comparison to the Lord of the Rings films, which had been such a smash hit. So I think that actually the Lord of the Rings films made a huge impact on the Hobbit's kind of success, and you know, its sales have doubled
since the movie.
140 million in total. Half of that is since Lord of the Rings came out.
Exactly. So that was a great review. Arabella, thank you so much for joining us.